Let's dive into a really fascinating story from the early days of Hollywood. It's all about how one of the biggest studios out there decided to step out of the sunlight and found its entire identity, its fortune, deep in the shadows. You have to remember, in the beginning, the whole movie business was built on brightness, right? It was all about stunning movie stars, big sweeping westerns, slapstick comedies that made you laugh. The whole point was to sell people a sunny, happy escape from their lives. But while pretty much everyone else in Hollywood was chasing that sun, something totally different was starting to bubble up over at Universal Studios. They were about to figure out that there was an absolute fortune to be made in the dark, and in doing so, they would change movies forever. So where does this all begin? Well, it starts with one guy, Carl Laemmle. And to really get Universal, you have to know it was a studio born out of a fight. Laemmle wasn't just some executive, he was a total maverick, an independent who's ready to take on a giant. So who was this giant he was fighting? A massive monopoly called the Edison Trust. I mean, try to imagine a single company controlling everything, the cameras, the projectors, even the film you shoot on. Laemmle's battle against this trust is what forged Universal's independent, rebellious spirit, right from the very beginning. And the result of that epic fight was Universal City. Get this, Laemmle literally took a 230-acre chicken farm and turned it into its own self-contained city for making movies. It was such a bold, ambitious move, and it really set the stage for everything that was about to happen. Okay, so let's jump forward to the 1920s. The studio's up and running, and Universal starts to, well, experiment. They began to dip a toe into darker, more macabre stories. And what they found was that audiences had this secret hunger for something a little more grotesque. And the person who held the key to all of this was Lon Chaney. You've probably heard his nickname, the Man of 1,000 Faces. He wasn't just an actor, he was a true artist with makeup and could physically transform himself. He was the one who proved that audiences weren't just okay with monsters, they were absolutely captivated by them. With Chaney as their leading man, Universal dropped these two silent epics. And they weren't just hit movies, they were these incredible atmospheric masterpieces. They showed that film could literally capture the feeling of a nightmare on screen. The foundation for horror was officially laid. But just as Universal is hitting its stride and finding this dark, spooky niche, the whole world changes. The Great Depression is starting to hit, and the incredibly expensive switch to sound films arrives. Suddenly, the entire studio is at a major crossroads. And this created a real conflict right at the top. On one side, you've got Carl Laemmle Sr., the pioneer, who built the place, and he's cautious. On the other side is his son, Junior, who is ambitious and sees the future not in playing it safe, but in going all in on the darkness. And the moment it all changed, you're not going to believe this. For his 21st birthday, his dad gave him control of the studio's production, a huge risk. And what does Junior do? He immediately looks to Europe, specifically to German Expressionism, with its distorted sets, crazy jagged shadows, and intense psychological vibe. He wanted to bring that unsettling style to American audiences. That one decision by Laemmle Jr. leads us right to the single most important moment in the history of Universal, and you could argue in the history of horror movies, period. 1 year, 1931. This is it. This is when everything just clicked into place. That giant risk Junior took, it paid off bigger than anyone could have possibly imagined. And it launched two absolute cinematic legends. First, there was Dracula. No, Bela Lugosi didn't play him like some grotesque creature from a nightmare. No way. He gave audiences this alluring, aristocratic foreign threat. His performance was completely magnetic, and it basically defined what a vampire was on screen from that moment on. And then, just a few months after that, Frankenstein arrives. And Boris Karloff's performance was the total opposite. It was deeply sympathetic, it was tragic, and it was almost completely silent. He made audiences feel sorry for the monster, which gave these scary movies this incredible, unexpected heart. So, having Dracula and Frankenstein come out back-to-back like that, it was a full-blown revolution. It didn't just save Universal during the Depression, it created the whole Universal Monster brand. This was a horror dynasty, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, and so many more, that became the bedrock of the studio's identity for decades. But the impact here went so much further than just ticket sales. It was cultural. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, but Universal literally created the visual playbook for horror that we still use today. I mean, just think about it for a second. The spooky, crumbling castle up on a hill, the mad scientist lab buzzing with electricity, those foggy, eerie moors, the sharp, dramatic, expressionist shadows. All of those things we instantly recognize as horror were basically perfected by Universal in the 1930s. It's just part of our shared cultural DNA now. And here's what's maybe the most important part of his whole story. For most other studios, horror movies were cheap, quick B-movies. But for Carl Laemmle Jr. and Universal, this was their prestige product. These were A-list movies, with top-tier directors and actors. They weren't just making disposable, scary flicks. They were elevating horror into a serious, celebrated art form. Which kind of leaves us with this really interesting question, right? By taking that huge gamble, the Laemmles didn't just save their company. They tapped into something fundamental about us, creating these icons that have lasted for almost 100 years. Their legacy proves that sometimes our fears are just as powerful as our dreams. So it makes you wonder, why do you think these old shadows still have such a powerful hold on us?